Cool. So, hey, folks, and welcome back to the Inside the Mix podcast. And in this episode, as usual, I'm always excited. I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Daniel Cox, is 1/3 of Pensacola Mist, who are a high-contrast synth-pop trio inspired by 80s synths and nostalgia. Known for their larger-than-life light show, powerhouse vocals, and electric on-stage energy. I love that description. And Dan's going to share the story behind Pensacola Mist, synth-pop songwriting, the ups and downs, and of being in a band, and the new album, which will be out on the 15th of July. Dan, thanks for joining me today, and how are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. Yeah, really looking forward to this too.
Hey, so I've been following you guys for a while online. I know we've been back and forth probably over the last year or so, and I absolutely love your music. It's right up my street in terms of like synth music and synth pop and whatnot, man. I've been binging it this week, as I always do. So for the audience listening via the podcast now, this is a live episode being streamed on Facebook. So if you're listening to this retrospectively, join the Facebook community group. There is a link in the show notes, and you can then keep up to date on future live episodes. So we're going to look at the story behind Pensacola Mist. So what I want to start with, the first question for this particular episode, is the story behind the band. Well, actually, let's start with your own story. So your musical life leading up to Pensacola Mist.
Yeah, well, growing up, music wasn't like a huge part of my life. Like my mom and dad had some favorites, and we would have them on cassette and listen to them mainly in the car and over. So there would be an album for maybe that would last us 2 years, and I'd just know it inside out. So it was, whether it was my dad listening to Sting, I guess, in the 90s, or the Cranberries, and my mom listening to the Cause,
nice.
So it's kind of like there'd be one tape for 18 months or so, and that would just get repeat. And other than that, there wasn't, I wasn't exposed to a lot of music. My granddad was in a folk band, and in fact, still is. Disrespectful to say he was, just because I haven't seen them for a little while doesn't mean that he's just stopped. And so there's kind of like this folky influence that was the start of music for me, and kind of certainly the start of seeing it performed live, and that I would ask at the age of 7 or 8 to see them every time they performed, and it was probably just in the corner of a pub somewhere, or there was like a fete or something, and they were playing, and I would just ask to be there at every opportunity they could, because I just loved seeing it come together live, and that's kind of left a mark on me. I'm quite sure. Yeah,
amazing. No, that's great. It's always great when you hear stories about how individuals have grown up with music and how it influences, and their parents getting involved with those influences as well. So with regards to music itself, is there like a seminal album or artist that sort of had a direct influence on you?
Yeah, so that kind of continued that lack of exposure to lots of music, kind of, until through my teenage years. And one of the first times I remember music really kind of hitting me, and I'm sure this will come up with other people in synth pop and synth wave, but it was playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City and just falling in love with those songs of the 80s. I'd listen to Flash FM on repeat. I'd sometimes turn on that game, park the car up, and just have the car radio going so I could hear some of those tracks. Mm-hmm. And I was just like enamored by how fun it was, and how light. And that's kind of, I guess, probably when I started checking out Top of the Pops 2 and stuff, and just seeing what other sort of 80s things I'd kind of missed. I guess actually a memory's just unlocked in my mind of buying, of my mum buying Black and White, the Michael Jackson track on cassette when I was probably like 4. I think I must have heard that on the radio and wanted that on. So that's sort of like, that sort of 80s, early 90s, but I guess mainly 80s stuff has just kind of been there in the background throughout the whole journey. But yeah, I think when that game came out and unlocked all these other sorts of things that I could hear and kind of delve into, it's bizarre that it would be a compilation from a video game that kind of starts it as something that unlocked it. But that was a real kicker for me to kind of get me going. And then if I then started to discover a few more bands through some of my friends, and it was actually Block Party that took me through most of my teenage years. That sort of smart indie rock, primarily based on Silent Alarm is still one of my favorite albums, and of course that's absolutely not synth in any way, but they do still like to play with guitars in a way through their loop pedals and their delays and things. So it's like kind of coming up with these different soundscapes out of something that everyone kind of starts with 2 guitars and a bass and drums, and see what can you do with that. So that's been something for me. But if I had to pick a band, and sometimes I don't tell this because it can give the wrong impression, or can require more of a follow-up, but I'm a mega fan of the band Kiss, and
oh yes,
and there's something about them that have, they just live here rent free the whole time. It's the aesthetics, and it's the stage show, and it's thinking that music can be something more than just what you play. And I'll be the first to say, I don't think there's a good Kiss album, and they had about 35. So it's not, that's something that's kind of bigger than music. And I think I enjoy seeing that with bands, and seeing what can they do that's more, as much as I love listening to Radiohead as well. Radiohead's a favorite band of my wife's, and that's on. And I love listening to more intelligent music, but sometimes just thinking that music is there as an escape is something that I just love going to, like. And something that synth pop and synth wave really help with, I think. It's kind of this, I like to say it's this nostalgia. It's rose tinted glasses for a time that never existed, but we can all kind of pretend we all have the same imaginary version of the 80s that just didn't exist, and we can all just open these different chapters on new stories that happen there, but they're all in this same shared universe somehow that we all know the rules to. So it's just seeing what can music be more than just putting on the CD.
Yeah, I like that. Going back to what you said right at the beginning there about Vice City, I very much did the same. I don't know about you, but what I would used to do is I'd find a plane, and I think in Vice City,
helicopters were in Vice City. They did have helicopters in there.
Yes, yeah, that was it. Yeah, and I would find a chopper, and then I would just circle and listen to the same radio station. And waiting for, I think it was Cutting Crew, Dying My Arms Tonight.
What a song.
I'm fairly certain that was on there. And I would wait. Yeah, fantastic song. I love it. And I would wait for that to come on, and then just keep circling around. That Vice City game is fantastic. And Kiss as well. Kiss are fantastic. I mean, songwriters, as you mentioned there about a band who are bigger than them. That's probably the wrong phrase. Not necessarily bigger than their music, but they certainly, as a brand, as an entity, they did it the right way. I mean, if you look at what they were doing in the 70s into the 80s as well, I mean, Gene Simmons, when you got the figures, and I think they had a cartoon as well.
They had a Marvel comic actually that they put put vials of their own blood into the red ink that got mixed into the comics. It was all about this bigger thing. So I kind of feel like I keep that mentality, obviously on this tiny scale, but everything I do, like, well, how can we make this bigger or more bombastic, or how do we make this more of a talking point than just this one thing we're doing? If we're already going to do something, we may as well turn it into something a little bit bigger and a little bit more exciting. That's something that we try and do with our stuff.
And make it different. Do something different. I didn't know they did that. That's so narcissistic,
isn't it? Isn't it? They were playing the media with it. Gene Simmons obviously has his character within the band, and I will never be certainly not of those days like a Gene Simmons defender. But Paul Stanley, the lead singer, is my go-to, and they all have these characters. And Paul Stanley's this romantic figure with roses, and he's the lover of the group. And then Gene Simmons is the opposite side to that, with the demon that's spitting blood. But they had this reputation for being devil worshippers, and Kiss standing for knights in Satan's service and everything. And it was never true. They're so soft. They're so light. I actually saw them on Download last week, which was their last ever UK show. And throughout the day, the crowd, when people were announcing that Kiss were headlining that night, the crowd are booing, because that's a crowd of metalheads and rockers, and they don't like Kiss because Kiss is not that. It's this kind of separate thing. It fits best in there, better at Download than it Leeds or Reading, but also it's so different and divisive.
Yeah, I think I saw Kiss. This will take me back now. I wish I'd gone to Download this year, but I saw them in 2000. I think it was 2008 or 2009. I
was there in 2008 as well.
Yeah. Oh, probably. I've stood right at the back of them. I watched. I did. I sort of I was going from A to B, and they were playing at the same time. I can't remember. I don't know if it was the full lineup or not.
Well, yeah, they've
don't know.
Gene and Paul, I think, as long as they're there at the head, then I think it all makes sense. They're talking and they're talking about replacing them at some point down the line, but I think that will be a very short-lived experiment. That as soon as they go, it's done. I think.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's where they're seeing it as maybe as a brand rather than like a.
They want to keep the Hello Kitty merchandise going, but.
Yeah, exactly. But I like what you said there about how you're trying to, on a smaller scale, trying to emulate it with the live shows that you guys put on as well, which we'll come back onto in a bit later. So that kind of moves us on nicely then onto like the birth of Pensacola Mist. So first things first, the name. Can you tell us where the name came from?
Yeah, well, like most names, I guess, or at least half names, out of thin air, really. The Mist part just happened straight away. It was always going to be Mist, and what's interesting is that we had this name when we recorded an album that was primarily guitar focused and was more down that sort of block party route that Oliver and I wrote together in our home studio. But it's translated so well into the synth world. Like, you know, we didn't have to consider changing it because Pensacola Mist just fits in here with this feeling. But yeah, so Mist had this evocative 80s mystery, you know, behind it. And we knew that you couldn't just be called Mist. There'll be a million other Mists. And if you Google Mist, you're going to get weather reports. And, you know, you want to be able to find us. You know, you've got to be able to find us. So we were thinking about place names in America. Again, thinking about that sort of romanticizing of the past of the States, and especially if you are not from the States, and specifically, I guess, from the UK, where everything that we ate in, you know, pop culture wise, was from America, really. You know, 90% of everything that we saw on TV or listened to was big from the States. So we started thinking of places in the States and just trying to match it with Mist and seeing what worked. And it was Oliver and I both have been lifelong wrestling fans as well. So we were just listing off wrestlers' hometowns, and then we got to Pensacola and thought, Pensacola, yeah, there's something in that. And it kind of like flows nicely. So Pensacola Mist it was, so out of that one night of what the hell did we put with Mist? It kind of came together.
Nice, I like that. That's a great story about being wrestling fans as well. And it's odd that you mentioned that, because earlier this week I found I had some time on my hands, and I was a wrestling fan back when I was sort of like 13, 14. This was like the prime era of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock and Mankind and that whole era. And I was watching videos from back then, and I ended up watching a Hulk Hogan. This is going way back, even further, versus Undertaker. And it's amazing how like wrestling just circles back, and it sort of underpins a lot of the social media, not a lot of it, but some of the social media I do as well. Whenever I'm responding to things, if I can't think of anything, I'll just find a wrestling GIF, chuck in there. But it's great to find that somebody else has done something similar and is on a similar pathway with that. But no, that's good. That's a cool. There's
so many lessons though that come from wrestling, much like you think of with Kiss and the aesthetics of it all, and almost what they call gimmicks. Their characters are gimmicks, and in music, I think that the legends that you put up there kind of have these gimmicks. Like, they're not these people that are living this. It's definitely themselves. And in wrestling, like I think in music, the best gimmicks are when it's a person just turned up to 10 or 11. You know, if we want to just talk Spinal Tap as well, and I feel like that's something that we've kind of tried to do as well. With, you know, whenever I play on the stage, I've got these fingerless gloves. I always wear a different leather jacket, and the show that we've got coming up next week, we're all in these black sequins, and it's like, we're not going to wear that stuff out and about, but it also doesn't feel uncomfortable when we do it on the stage, because we're just finding these characters, these gimmicks that kind of is the same as the characters that Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley were playing, or that Undertaker is in wrestling, or Stone Cold Steve Austin. They're taking elements of themselves and just turning it up, and I think that any classical, you know, Freddie Mercury and David Bowie and Michael Jackson and all those people are kind of a gimmick that they are living and turning up to 10 and kind of presenting themselves. And then that's, you know, I feel like that's how you can make a good connection with audiences by being more than a shoegazer, which, you know, it is all fine if that's what you do, but I think it's more fun to kind of find that character and turn it into something.
No, I'm with you on that one. I totally agree. And I think when you see live acts, and you can see that they've put the effort in to make something different, something visual, to go with their music as well. I think it's a massive part of the overall show. And also it comes back to the fact that there is something memorable as well. And it's a different experience that they would get otherwise. And it's more fun for you, I think, as the performer as well. I remember when I was in a band and I performed, and admittedly, we didn't go down the stretch of having the outfits and stuff like that. But I would always think to myself, you kind of want to, I was never a shoegazer, which is probably why I made so many mistakes when I was performing live. Yeah. But I thought to myself, you know what, there's another guitarist in the band, so I can sort of get away with it a bit. And it was heavy metal. So once again, there's some leniency there. But yeah, I think Certainly, you got to put on a show. I think that's key. And from what I've read from the feedback and I've seen and the various bits and pieces I've seen online, you as a live outfit certainly do put on a show. Which is amazing. So with regards to the band itself, so how did you sort of meet? From what I can gather is it was yourself and Oliver to begin with, and then Melissa joined further down the line. How did you meet Oliver? And how did things get started?
So Oliver and I, I'm a couple of years older than Oliver, but we both met in school together, and we both hang out in the music room, and we were in different bands, but we got to know each other that way. And you start jamming as you do when you've got some free time at school or at breaks, and we just kind of always there are a couple of people that I've been lucky enough to meet and can just partner with in terms of music, and just I do something and they do something that completes it, and it's always that way. And so Oliver and I have been making music together for although Pensacola Mist is probably about five years old now. We've been writing music together for about 15 years, I think, going way back to school, in different bands and in different forms. But this Pensacola Mist was the first time that we tried to really come up with something that felt cohesive, and that we kind of had an idea in mind from the start. We're from a really small town called Berwick-upon-Tweed that's right on the border of England and Scotland. And we're 60 miles away from Newcastle and 60 miles away from Edinburgh, so we're quite out of the way. Being quite rural, there's not a huge population here, so you find yourself there's the same 20, 30 musicians of your age group that just circulate between bands, and of course it's always the case that there's probably 3 drummers in town, and you're all trying to get a hold of them. And when you can get a hold of them, you tend to have 4 vastly different styles of musicians that come together when you're in that sort of situation. And so what we've made in the past has been really fun, but has not been, I guess cohesive is the best word for it. We're all coming with these different influences, and you get something interesting, but sometimes you kind of want to create a piece that feels like it belongs all together, and that it's really kind of trying to say something without getting distracted by how 4 different genres might approach it, I think. And so Oliver and I started Pensacola Mist primarily as a home studio project, where we would write together. We would write songs that we believed in, and then we'd maybe try and find the band to fill the gaps after that point, which we knew would be tricky, but at least we'd have some material to kind of start the ball rolling. Is someone interested in filling the shoes of this drum track that we've already written, or this second guitar part or something? And I guess that's how Pensacola Mist started in the form that it is now.
I think that's a really cool way of doing it. I think because with regards to certain instruments in a band, you probably know this, they're a lot harder to find than others. Drummers, for example, finding a good drummer can be very, very tricky, and bass players as well. And so actually not having that hindrance of thinking, oh, we can't actually do anything until we find these 2 other or 3 or however may be other individuals it's quite nice to hear that you can just start writing and creating this body of work, and thinking actually now we can plug the gaps with the people we find along the way. So I think that's a fantastic way of doing it. So how long did you sort of write music with Oliver before Melissa came onto the scene?
So we did a couple of guitar-based albums, just the 2 of us, and we were still at that point essentially preparing material to play live with the band. And eventually, I mean, the technology is at the core of everything that we've done with Pensacola Mist up to this day. We've never, we couldn't do it without the technology that we use now. And I think so many other synthwave and synth-pop artists would say the same, with how heavily they rely on what they can do with the technology that's in front of them. So it was having GarageBand on my Mac that let us do those first 2 albums, and it was free, and it was on there, and it's really easy to use, and that helped us kind of create that first vision. Then when we got to try and find the musicians to fill the gaps, it just didn't really happen. I guess we're in that rural area again. We couldn't find somebody that kind of felt that same material. We tried a couple of drummers who came along, and they kind of liked the idea, but I absolutely understand this, but coming into a project that's somewhat established in terms of the material there, which was helpful for us to know who we wanted to be, meant that they felt like there was a lack of ownership on their part, and I completely get that, and they'd kind of want to be involved in the origin of the material as well. So that made sense to me. So we had just about given up on ever playing live and thought, you know, maybe this is fine. This is the future. We can make this music, and we maybe can't play it live, but we can keep writing and recording and sending it out there and try and get it across in other ways without being in front of a live audience. And it was then that we discovered that Churches, who were a band that we were both fans of, but didn't, you know, we weren't mega fans, but we had been fans throughout the years. That was when we discovered that they played for 10 years without a live drummer. And, you know, they were using samples and they were using drum machines, and we thought maybe that's something that we can do. So that single-handedly twisted the genre of music that we write, because us playing guitar with a drum and backing track, we were concerned would feel quite karaoke. And we never wanted to kind of be like a fake band. We thought, well, how do we turn this into actually what we do then? And then this is now a part of us. It's not a limitation. It's what makes us is playing with this technology. So that's when we just started to dip our toes more and more into synth and bringing out arpeggiators and trying to just build up the tracks. And then all of a sudden the guitars were staying hanging up here. You know, that's by the by. We're just sitting and writing stuff with keys instead. And so we did two albums. We did one album, this Neon City, that was our first kind of synth-based album, and we just loved working with that material. It unlocked so much more in us. I'm not sure, as a musician yourself, whether you've ever felt the same way you pick up the guitar or you pick up your instrument and you just find yourself kind of using the same riffs, using the same chord patterns. And what this let us do was kind of like start again, but with some of the songwriting knowledge that we'd kind of developed over the years, but this entirely new way of thinking with looking at keys and everything. So it was really refreshing to us to do that and let us have the live show. So this is a really long way of going around telling you that when we had Want to Believe, the album we released last year, we were looking for a female vocalist. In fact, we kind of always had our eye on a female vocalist, and again, similarly, we just didn't find one that would really work or that would mesh with our style very well. And Melissa had actually worked on a project that Oliver was doing, where he was uploading covers to YouTube every week, and he would get guest vocalists from. We've both been involved in theatre as well, and Oliver more so than myself. He's been in fringe productions and musicals, and he has lots of contacts who can sing. So he was working with all these different musicians and different singers. And Melissa was one that stuck in my mind, certainly, as just having this really beautiful, sweet, soft voice, but it wasn't apologetic, which was quite difficult to find, I think, because sometimes you can be quite sickly sweet. I feel like she's this, I kind of call her bittersweet sometimes, because she's got that really sweet, soft vocals, but there is a bite in it, and you don't want to get on the wrong side of it, and you don't want to unlock it when, you want it to be there when she kind of unleashes. So it just worked out so well. We asked her to do the song Sex and Violence on that album. And yeah, I guess the rest is history. It just worked so well that we thought, let's try this out. So we tried out doing some gigs with her for a year, building her into the material we already had and kind of writing things in the studio. And then we thought, this is it. This is just the way it was meant to be. So I think last November, December, we announced that she was going to join full time. And yeah, it feels like we're complete now.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer, and there's a few bits.
Sorry, once you wind me up, it's hard to stop me. So.
No. There's loads of good stuff in there. So circling back to what you said about playing the same riffs, and I very much did the same. I remember being in a band, and maybe it's because of my own limitations as a guitarist, and maybe I could put more time into it, the whole 10,000 hours, as it were. But I was finding myself, I'd always jam out the same riff, and I'd be playing the same sort of lead bit, and it would always be like, oh man, I've heard this bit before, and I was stagnant. I couldn't come up with anything new. Admittedly, I probably wasn't the main songwriter in the band I was in, which is total polar opposite to what I do now. But I am the songwriter in what I release. But I very much agree with what you said there. And it wasn't until I started writing the electronic music and started using keys. I'm not a piano player. I'm not a keyboard player either. But programming is my friend in this instance. But when it came to the sonic soundscape available to me with the different instruments and also the variety of different things I could find online, it sort of opened up this whole new world, as you mentioned then, about where you find it when you're in the band itself. So certainly been down that route, and it's probably the same for a number of producers and artists. I would say, kind of, it just opens up this world of possibilities when you're. It's amazing, really, when you think about it. And I think this touches on something I had an interview last week. And we were talking about the accessibility of technology. and the accessibility means that you could have a 13-inch MacBook Pro, or there are other devices available if you, yeah, just in case somebody does want a sponsorship further down the line. Yeah, I mean, you could have that, and you could write. I mean, the amount of stuff that I hear that has been produced on just that alone is incredible. So yeah, there's that, and then it was the edge on the vocals as well, which I totally agree with. And I don't know what you think, but I think Churches as an influence. I know I released a song a couple of years ago, and there was very much a Churches influence on that. And there's a kind of an edge or a bite. I mean, that might be slightly with the accent, but there's certainly an edge to that. And I think you're right in that sense. And I think that's what you need. And in particular, that song that you mentioned, Sex and Violence, which is
thank you.
Amazing, by the way. And how I haven't been streaming that on repeat before, I don't know. But I've been listening to that all week. And it's such a good song. So the audience listening, if you want a first sort of dive into Pensacola Mist, go check out that tune. Obviously, check out everything else
good recommendation. Thank you.
I mean, that is a fantastic song, man. Yeah, I absolutely love it. And it's like you said there about the grittiness behind the vocal. If you didn't have it, if Melissa didn't have it, I don't think you would have that edginess that comes with the chorus as well. If it was a soft vocal with that line and that particular hook, it wouldn't work, would it? Yeah, amazing stuff. So, kind of circling back right to the beginning, you mentioned how you yourself and Oliver started this project, and you weren't quite sure whether it was going to go live, depending on who came in. What was the initial goal, and has that changed over time?
I guess it's twisting along the whole way. We had aspirations to be regionally famous. I think that was what we started with the guitar band. Is we want to, the Northeast has got a really great music scene. It's quite guitar heavy. But I think that when we started, we thought there's no reason why we can't get involved in some of those conversations too. And that was our lot. That's what we would be happy with if we'd have just done some of the circuit there, made friends with the people that we were hearing on that scene. But then once we opened up and changed into this synth vibe, we've kind of, this is actually something that I've also stolen from Kiss, but it's something that we work with too, is to try and be the band that we haven't seen or that we want to see live. And there are certainly many, many bands that do everything that we do on a bigger scale and with I guess more bells and whistles, but on the scale of the shows that we do in sort of small, mid-sized venues, like I still haven't seen someone that brings in the fully programmed light show that we do and have the larger than life soundscape that's created through that. And I mean, that sounds cocky, and I certainly don't mean it to be, but I think primarily it comes to coming to a Pensacola Mist show. It's in the downstairs of this pub, for instance, or it's in this small venue we saw Blues in last week, and then you've got this big light show that just like I didn't expect to see something like this in this place. That's something that we kind of love playing with, and we using some of the staging experience that we've had and the memories of shows that we've been to. What are the moments that you remember when you leave a show, and why do you remember that? And most times for me, it's because there was a real there was a real, I don't want to say rehearsed element to it, but there's a blocking moment of saying, in this point, in this song, this thing will happen. And it may just be that. So when I saw The Midnight a few weeks ago, the saxophonist goes to his spotlight in the stage and he plays, and you remember, and I can see that now and I remember it. And that's, that's not saying that it's disingenuous, but it's like he had Mark there to stand at that point and the crowd go crazy. And if he was stood at the back in the back line doing the same thing, it would have still been impressive, but it wouldn't have left that mark. And so, that's the sort of level of things that we want to try and do is we want you to have half a dozen things that you remember when you leave seeing us as these kind of memory markers. I think that's it. I think that we'd be happy with that. It's so great to get it out to new people and to kind of widen the net. And I love seeing the countries that have streamed us. And even if we've only had one stream in a country, to just add another country to the list and say, we've been streamed in over 100 countries. It's great. I want one of those scratch maps and just see even one stream in every country would be such a lovely thing to have, just to say we've been heard all around the world. It's kind of small, manageable things, but I guess ultimately we just want to keep having fun with what we do and keep pushing ourselves, until, well, I don't know, I guess until we feel we've done it all. And I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No, it's a nice response. I like that. And it kind of what you've basically done there is you've answered what was going to be my next question, which is amazing, which was about the live show, what the audience can expect. And I think you've articulated it very, very well there in what you've said. And just touching on what you said there about the midnight, mildly jealous that you've seen it, by the way, because I haven't. I did see you being there so on social media. It's amazing when you go to gigs like that. And I've had this, not a midnight gig, but I've been to other shows. And sometimes when you are feeling as an artist, maybe you hit a bit of a rut, you're not sure where it's going. And then you go watch a live act like the midnight or someone like that. And it just really reignites that flame to think, you know what, I'm going to go away from here. And it's moments like you said about the saxophonist stood on the stage there. And I've experienced something like that. So I'm a huge Def Leppard fan. And I remember watching Def Leppard. It was on my birthday for a number of years ago at the Motor Point in Cardiff. And then it was the Hysteria tour. So Phil Collins walks out and he walks straight out to the middle, like low lights. And then suddenly there's a beam of light on him. It's just him playing the intro. And I'm just like, wow, this even now, I get shivers.
But how strong is that memory and how clear is that in your mind? And
exactly. I mean, I can remember bits and pieces from the rest of the gig, but I couldn't tell you what song was being played at the time. But there's that one moment and you're thinking, you know what? It's moments like that sort of like inspire you to continue on as a musician, but also you can take that away. I'm not a performing artist anymore, but it's certainly something. And you can put all those pieces together.
I think so.
Create this sort of Frankenstein hybrid
making
show,
set lists is always fun. And in fact, this album, we thought more about the live show than any others, as we've kind of established ourselves with what that live show means to us and what we want it to mean to the audiences. So there's definitely parts in these tracks that have how that will come across to the audience there. Sometimes it's easy to get stuck in what I like in the moment of being sat in the chair here on the screen, but it's been really helpful to kind of think a bit bigger and actually envisage what that looks like on the stage. And you know, it may be just like we have a song where we just leave, Melissa and I leave, and we just usually I use Ableton to trigger all of the samples and all of the effects, and I'm doing that with all the different parts, so I can kind of remix it. I can drop the drums out, I can drop the bass out, I can add it, and I can repeat bits. So they're all separate tiles in Ableton. But for that song, I just hit play and I've programmed that to just run. And Oliver just takes the stage, and he's there on his own, and he does this amazing performance of this track. You know his vocals are so strong on it. We don't need anything else. We leave, and people always, you know, they remember that bit too. We left, and then we get to come back, and it just keeps the set fresh. Because even seeing bands that I've really enjoyed by the 50th minute or the 15th song, you know, and I'm kind of feeling like it's a little samey sometimes, and to kind of break it up is something that certainly I enjoy seeing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's something that's echoed in music as well. And I had a conversation with another artist a number of weeks ago, or a week or so ago. And it was when I sent a track across to the this producer. I was just like, can you just give me a bit of feedback? And they said the exact same thing. It's like you have a song. It's much like a live performance as well, where you have that night and day. And sometimes you need to reduce those dynamics of what's going on just to keep the interest there. Because if it's full throttle all the way through, you kind of, like you mentioned there, I've been to gigs where I'm like that. And at the end of it, it's just a blur, you know? And having that night and day, and specifically when it's just one person, something different, it keeps the audience engaged, I think. I think it's a fantastic thing to do. Do you ever perform down in, how far into South, for the audience listening, I'm based in the Southwest. How far south into the Southwest have you been?
We started our live show about less than a year before the pandemic hit. So that was good timing. And so we just started to kind of know who we are and get our show together when we had to stop. And so we've only done, we've done about 20 gigs, but they've mostly been regionally here in the Northeast. We have plans to do a tour later in the year, and we want to kind of cover a lot of, most of the major cities. So hopefully we'll get that towards the end of the year, which will be really fun to get in front of new audiences. Again, going back to technology and the sort of reach of social media and how brilliant the scene seems to be with synth is that everyone seems to be so supportive. And when you have these synth groups on Facebook pages or Instagram pages, and they start sharing about these gigs coming up, and there's just this instant swell of support. I feel quite lucky to be involved in it, even if very few people have heard of us. there'd be enough to say, oh, there's this thing and they've got this show and we'll go and see it. And once that starts on those pages, I reckon that we could get a nice sized crowd. I mean, a nice sized crowd to me is if we can get 20 people in a city we've never been in. I'm happy with that. You know, that's the start of something. But it feels like it's a really supportive scene, and I'm hoping that will take us around the country a little further than just here in the Northeast.
No, that would be amazing. The reason why I asked this is because I was trying to make sure that I hadn't,
not yet.
missed out that you were performing down this way.
We'll be down to see you soon.
I think the closest, I know there was a recent event in Bristol,
right.
So I'm in Exeter, and Bristol's not that far, and there was a gig put on there. But to echo what you said there about the support, I think if you were to say if a gig is put on whereby it is synth orientated, synth wave, synth pop, synth music, I think because the scene and the network and the shareability and the way content is shared by people in the scene and the fans of it as well and the artists, it's different to what I've experienced before. And I think you'd get a crowd, specifically now people are hungry to go out and enjoy live music as well. So you put those two
there's
factors
friends around
together.
the country as well, and label mates that we know that we are keen to tie up with as well. We've not met in person yet, but we would love to do shows together. Young Empress in particular, we've been talking to quite a lot about doing some shows together, and I think that should work really well when that happens. And it's all a case of when and not if. And you're right. There's just these real solid, genuine sort of support and friendships in the scene. You know, there's very little bickering and negativity compared to some of the other stuff that could be out there. And I think it's because it's quite niche and but it's quite rare still for everybody to know that it grows when everyone's in it together.
Yeah, I agree. I think I say this on a lot of the podcast episodes in terms of how supportive the community is and how you meet and talk to new people every week, and specifically doing things like this podcast as well. I talk to so many different people, not only on the podcast, but outside of it as well in relation to it. And it is amazing compared to what I've experienced in other musical genres, which is totally fantastic. But no, I look forward to seeing that. And obviously I'll keep an eye on the page and whatnot and on Instagram and stuff and see where you guys are performing. Because I've been to countless rock and metal gigs, but admittedly, I've never actually been to have I? No, I can't say I have ever actually been to a synth wave, synth pop, synth music based gig. It's always been rock and metal for me. So it'd be something different.
There's a rumbling though in the scene. I think that Bristol event I didn't get to, but I was very envious not to be there, and I kept my eye on it and saw everything that was on socials with it. And I'm hoping that becomes a somewhat regular event. That might become the Hopefully. UK Super Bowl or the WrestleMania of synth. Is this Bristol event? And that would be brilliant. But it's just there's a rumbling, and again, until the midnight, I hadn't really seen anything that was super synth. Again, our location hasn't really helped. The pandemic hasn't really helped, but it just feels as if the time is right. In the next few years, there'll probably be plenty of opportunities to see more.
I definitely think so. And I think also from a production side of things, when I listen to, now I do admittedly listen to Radio 1, I dive in and out because I like to keep on top of the current musical trends. And the more I listen to it, I can hear elements creeping in, these little synth elements and these little arpeggiators rather, and arpeggios.
It's a brilliant song, but Harry Styles, I forget what that track is. This is where I don't usually check into Radio 1 and I should know, but there's that Harry Styles song that's kind of taken over the last few months. And we've had a number of people say, that sounds like a Pensacola Mist song. There's just that little way of thinking, that sort of 80s, the riffs. As It Was, is that what it's called? The Harry Styles track? And yes. It's a brilliant song. I wish it was ours, but you can hear it. There's easy made synth covers in some of these pop hits these days now. So yeah. Yeah,
it's interesting you mentioned that one because I follow Justin Hawkins from The Darkness on YouTube, and he's got a fantastic. I never knew this existed. I think it's Justin Hawkins Rides Again, and I strongly recommend, even if you're not a Darkness fan, just go check it out, audience, because he kind of picks apart music and performances and things like that. And he did one on David Coverdale, Whitesnake, massive Whitesnake fan I am, and but he did one on that song by Harry Styles, and he pointed out how it's the actual phrasing used in that song is the same as Aha, Take On Me.
Yeah.
But it's shifted. So they start at a different note. I know there's more to it than this, but he's described it way better than I can. And I think in the Harry Styles one, they start one or two notes ahead of Aha. But I think that just goes to show that how successful that song is. And then it's essentially, if you look back into the 80s, it's sort of like it's been influenced by one of the biggest songs of the 80s, and Take On Me by Aha. And it just goes to show how much that riff and that 80s nostalgia is creeping in.
Wait a second. And I'm not one of these that says that every band should sue every other band for because there's, you know, there are only so many notes and there are only so many orders. So that's all fair game. That's legally distinct enough. But I did notice it too, thinking you can just transpose this a little bit and it kind of starts to work. But, you know, it doesn't take it away. It doesn't take it away.
No, not at all. It's like you say, you got to find influence somewhere. I mean, find me someone who's just writing out of the blue, who's like says they have no influences, and I'd call them a liar. That might be a bold statement by me there. I'll probably get a lot of people
I'd like to say actually as well
but
yeah, you know, I'm very envious of what I would call proper songwriters who do take it very seriously and create this amazing art, because there is a real art to songwriting, obviously, but there are these different sides, and synth and the sort of synth that we do is trying to just kind of focus on fun and you know, more than trying to be transformative, trying to transform someone's life with the lyrics of a particular song. I find that quite freeing because I'm not very good at lyrics. I think typically we have a good go, and in fact, actually, that's part of the reason why we mostly create stories for our tracks rather than try and find something from within us. We kind of create a scenario, and we create a scene, and then we think, well, what does that character feel? And that kind of helps us kind of write through them rather than kind of find something deep and meaningful within us. So I just want to say, in case there are any real serious songwriters listening, I'm absolutely envious of what you can do, and I wish I could, but that's, you know, that's not really what Pensacola Mist is about.
Well, I mean, in response to that, in all fairness, I think you're fantastic songwriters. So,
I worried there. Did I slag off Pensacola Mist too much? I certainly didn't mean to, but I can't get the balance right here.
No, not at all. No, that's fine. So it kind of leads on nicely to my next question, because I'm well aware of time here, and this is what happens on this show. I often digress, and I then look at the clock, and I'm like, oh, actually, I haven't even got to the third part of the show yet. So, which is the songwriting and the compositional process behind the band. How does that start? So obviously you've got Melissa on board now. So maybe that's the wrong sort of question. I was going to say who's the main songwriter, but let's put it another way. How does the song come together?
Until this album, every song started with Oliver and I sat next to each other at this desk and a blank Logic document open. And we would pretty much always go straight to the basses and just figure out a bass line that we liked, and then kind of built from there and kind of seen where it took us. The pandemic changed things again, that we had to work separately for the first time, and a lot of the tracks on this next album have been originated separately and then finished together. But there's no real this is the way it's done these days anymore. You know, sometimes ideas just hit, and I'm sure you'll hear this from most people, but it could be you just wake up in the morning and I'm humming a song that doesn't exist, or that I hope doesn't exist, and then I come upstairs and try and turn that into something as a 10-minute sketch, and then we come back to it later, or it's an idea. It's the lyrics to something that kind of like just hit, like, oh, that's great, and I don't think I know a song that sings about that one thing, so maybe that's the start of something, and we kind of take it. But I think my favorite way is the blank project with Oliver and I sat next to each other. And as frustrating as that can be sometimes, to be onto a loser, or to struggle to kind of build it into what we expect it could be, when it does work, it's just worth it. You know, that high of going, okay, this is great. And the song starts to spiral and just unfold itself and kind of write itself. Sometimes it feels like when we get onto the right track.
Nice, I like that. It's quite refreshing as well to hear that you're together songwriting, because in the electronic world that we live in particular, when it comes to music production, I mentioned this earlier about the accessibility of music, and it's fantastic that you can collaborate with someone on the other side of the world and you can create something incredible. But it's also quite nice to hear that you're sat next to Oliver and writing at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Melissa, where does Melissa fall into it? Is she
so Melissa's in Edinburgh?
Or is this where you...
So we get fewer days in the studio with her. Again, the timing of her joining has been quite tricky. I'd like to see us go back to more 3-way blank projects in this room, There's only one track actually on this next album that started in that way, and it's really, it's really refreshing. It feels really different because we had those three opinions kind of going into it. And that's a track called "Afraid to Stay the Night," which was one of the first days we spent with Melissa after thinking, is this a permanent thing? What would it be like if we wrote a song that included Melissa from the off, rather than trying to put her into something afterwards? And yeah, so that's what we'd really like to do. Melissa is actually very good at lyrics, so she's been really useful to us, because Oliver and I have spent so many hours in absolute silence where we just can't find the 4 words that we need to fill that pre-chorus before we get in there, that doesn't sound really cheesy or really lame, but also sounds as though we've thought about it a little bit. And so sometimes, well, more than once, and I don't know quite how Melissa feels about this, but we've gone, we'll just leave that blank and we'll see what Melissa can come up with. And usually all the time it's gold, and we just keep it and it's unchanged from that point. So, that's a real key that she's bringing into our songwriting there. But she doesn't have a musical background in that she knows how to play any instruments, but she has listened to music throughout her whole life. She's a big fan. She's a big fan of music, and always has been. Again, she's been in musicals. She's a fantastic singer. So it'll be so great to see what that can bring to the studio when we're in the space going ahead. So yeah, we've just begun that songwriting process with Melissa, really, but I'm excited to see what it means when we manage to block a weekend in the studio together and just see what we can make.
No, it does sound very exciting. So my next question off the back of that is, you mentioned there about earlier when you have a blank project, a blank slate, blank canvas, as it were, and then you throw some ideas down. So this is probably the $1 million question. How do you know? Because I don't know about you, but I start projects and then I'll put them to the side and I'll start something else and I'll do that and I'll revisit. How do you know when you're onto a winner? How do you know when you're like, actually,
I think every album that we've done, we have about between 60 and 100 tracks that we've started for that album, and so most of them end up being something that we don't pursue further. And sometimes we try and it feels like we're trying too hard. And if it ever feels like we're trying too hard, then it probably wasn't meant to be. And there's some nice phrases in some of those tracks. And occasionally I go back to see if there's anything that we can pull out and use somewhere else, or to see if all of a sudden inspiration will hit with fresh eyes on it a year later. But it tends to be, if we sit and we're thinking for too long, or we've not been excited about it for a little while, then we'll just leave it and we'll just start again. And so some sessions we might start 6 songs and we get 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour in, 40 minutes, and go, we're just not feeling it, and move on, try another one. It feels like quite a natural decision to make, to drop a track and find another one. I think it feels that way, that we're always trying to find a track that will unveil itself rather than try to create a track, which is silly because it is the same thing, I guess. But sometimes you've got the wrong ingredients to start with.
Yeah, I like that idea, and I think it's a great way of thinking in terms of, rather than, well, in what you said there, and I think it echoes an interview I did. I think it was last year. Who was it with? I can't remember who it was with now, but the artist mentioned how they just write songs and songs and songs and songs, and eventually there will be that one song that sort of stands above the rest, rather than trying to write the perfect song. I think it's very similar in a way, I guess, to actually, I know when I'm writing, I don't know, copy for a website, or I'm writing a bio or something, or just anything, I'll just write, and then I'll go back and refresh, and then sort of like revisit it and see what it's like and rehash it. So it's very, I'm with you on that one. Rather than trying to think, all right, I'm going to write the next masterpiece.
It's always got to be fun.
See what happens.
I think that's what it starts with. Is if we're not having fun, that's why we did this. This was our little escape. We had other than trying to maybe do some shows at the very start, it was just, we had some free time and it was always fun. So let's keep it fun. So as long as it's fun, it kind of like works itself out, I think.
Yeah, totally on board with that. And I think as soon as it doesn't become fun, it turns into a part-time job, which I've been down that route. And then, that's when it can get a bit laborious. But no, it sounds like whatever you're doing is working, which is great. So once again, I'm aware of time. So there's a few songs I wanted to talk about. But I'm going to have to sort of like shorten my list down, as it were. So Horizon, correct me if I'm wrong, that's your latest single. Yeah. Can you tell the audience listening, if they haven't heard it before, sort of the story behind Horizon? What can they expect?
Well, Horizon was, I guess, primarily an Oliver idea that he brought to the table that we kind of finished. But again, thinking of the live show, we try and keep the energy up on a lot of tracks, but we are aware, as you said before, sometimes that can feel that can be overwhelming and border on annoying if you've just got lots of noise and lots of energy all the time. So Horizon is quite I think of it as more of a chill out track. It's, but it has quite a fast tempo to it. It keeps driving through, but we're trying to create some space within the track. It's the story of a bank robbery gone wrong, essentially. This is again where synth works really well for us, and sort of that nostalgia for the 80s is that we can mine all these ridiculous and great 80s movies and plots and think, does it sound like it could have been an 80s movie? Great, that's okay. It's not. It might be over the top for folk or for indie or something similar, but we can write a song about a bank robbery. That's okay. It's not unusual here. It's a safe space. It works out well. I guess we tried to make an earworm that's our choruses tend to have a few elements to them, and I think this one we tried to just scale it back, and so essentially the chorus is pretty much the phrase "play it cool" over and over. It's the person trying to tell themselves in this situation that they're failing at to keep cool, stay calm, play it cool, and so yeah, that's kind of like the little hook, the little earworm that we wanted to kind of create with that one. Of course, mixing it and getting it ready for release, I got slightly sick of hearing "Play It Cool" because it's in that track 64 times, and you'll know how many times you listen to a track. So I must have heard "Play It Cool," over 10,000 times by this point. but yeah, that's the story of Horizon. It's this kind of upbeat, chill track that's I guess got this sort of radio friendly feel, I guess, because of that repetitive hook in the chorus.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that I think listening to your catalogue of music, you're very good as an outfit at writing hooks, and it's something that I find that sticks in my head a lot, listening to your music. You mentioned there about the earworms in particular, and a lot. I think when it comes to the sort of music that you're releasing, it's quite similar to the stuff that I've done as well. And I've said this before on the podcast in terms of like, I'll play the music to someone else, for example, my girlfriend, and if I find her humming the hook, I mean, that's right. I set that sometimes as a barometer of success in terms of like, okay, if I can get someone who's totally new and hasn't heard this before, because like you said there, I mean, if you're mixing a track or producing it, you listen to the same thing over and over again, regardless of whether it's any good or not. It gets stuck in your head. But no, I think like I said there, you guys are fantastic at writing hooks, and I've got to say, and which kind of leads me on nicely to the next question, which is, I mentioned this song earlier about the song called Sex and Violence, which is probably my favorite track that I've heard so far. So you mentioned that was the first song, if I'm right, with Melissa on vocals. Is that correct? Yeah. So just a bit of a story behind that one.
Yeah. So I guess this was when we were trying to play with heavy synths, because we'd use synth lightly and in sort of synth pop ways, and it's not a pure synthwave track by any means, but we did try to like make it a little darker and kind of bring out some of the sort of dark synth elements of it, and write a melody with Melissa in mind. That was the very first time. So I've got a great demo track of Oliver singing that in what he expects Melissa's voice to sound like, and I'd like to put that out there some point because it's quite funny, but it was about creating the drama and creating the big bombastic feel of that one, and that was the first time I used a trick that I've used a couple of times since, that I noticed first in I think it was Night Call by Kavinsky, where he's punctuating each of those start notes with a really deep like Steinway or like a big piano sound, and boom, and like just letting that rumble through, and how powerful that feels to kind of drive that track on, and how the dynamics just increase so much if you've got that low, big, heavy, punchy sound that kind of underpins it. Then you're kind of free. You've got some ground in there to just build up and kind of give it some height as well. So that was a really fun track to work on. Bringing in the arps, and Oliver and I, the way that we work so well together, I think, is that Oliver, when he comes up with his tracks, might put in lots and lots and lots of ideas, and they can maybe feel like they need a little bit of focus, and I can come in and bring a little bit of focus in. And that might be, in fact, so in Sex and Violence, there's just a 4-note riff. There's more than 4 notes there. But anyway, it's a really simple part, but it just ties all those other bits into like a central pattern. That's the track that is going down, and then these other parts are spinning off of it. And that wasn't there before. And what Oliver does to me is that I feel like my tracks sometimes need a level of unpredictability, or they need a little bit more energy. I might get stuck doing a sort of repeating riff that kind of falls in a really nice pattern, a really nice arc, but then I kind of keep it too contained, and Oliver can explode it out. So it works really well together, because he comes to my ideas and makes them bigger, and I kind of come to his ideas and focus them down, and they meet somewhere in the middle. And Sex and Violence is, I think, one of my favorite examples of the two of us kind of doing what we do best on that track, and then being a showcase for Melissa's vocals for the first time. And just, that's a real great introduction to, I guess, what we want the next part of Pensacola Mist to be like.
No, that's really, really cool. And I like the idea that you mentioned there about augmenting or accentuating the initial hit of the bar with like a Steinway. And you can certainly hear that. And it's that impact that is really, really good on that track. And it's something that I like to do in productions as well, whether that's bringing in an extra sort of kick element during a chorus, or just sort of like automating the volume, or just changing the velocity of a sample slightly, just to get that initial punch and impact to come through, and adding dynamics. And I think it's perfectly sort of showcased in that song, which is amazing. And it's so nice as well. I'm envious of your position in your band, that you've got those two opposite forces coming together and in this maelstrom and creating this amazing music, which is, once again, going back to what I said earlier about the accessibility of music and being able to write and produce on your own. And there is that solitary element that actually sometimes it's nice to have someone else there to bounce ideas off of, which, in saying that, the community is great for that, because I know for a fact there's the number of artists I can send a track to, and they'll give me really honest and really, really good feedback.
Yeah, of course.
So it's
a good question, actually, but based on something that
yeah, sure,
that a feeling that I feel, and I'm not aware of it until it happens, and I want to see whether this is something that happens with you too. But I might come up with a track, or Oliver and I come up with a track, and I get really excited about it, and then I'll show it to my wife, or I'll show it to a friend. And at that moment, I realize there's something that I really don't like in it, or that I cringe. And I had never heard it before until I know that someone's listening to it for the first time. And then I kind of cover it up and say, oh, that'll be different. That but I hadn't realized I didn't like it until someone new was listening to it. And it's instant. And there's nothing different except from a different set of ears. And I just wondered whether that's something that you found as well. You were saying about having your girlfriend humming the hook or something, and that being a win. But do you ever have that on the flip side to realize that maybe something's not quite working that you didn't realize? Yeah,
I have. And it's happened when I've released music as well. Yeah. So I'm one of those ones whereby I'll have a song that gets to a point where I'm just like, I've got to call it now. And I know there's a little bits and pieces I'll be able to change, but I've had it where I've been with friends and they've got a playlist going, and a song of mine comes on, and like, and I sort of grimace, and they're like, "What? Like, you released it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm being the diva thing, saying I don't like listening to my own music, but no, I certainly do." And then what do I do with it off the back?
It's a little late in the game then. When
Sometimes I'll go away. Yeah, well, yeah. There in that instance,